Daf Kufam at base, the second line from the top. Continue on with the Isser Dorabanan of climbing or using a tree on Shabbos. Tanichada, one brayso we learned that the Isser applies where the tree is a living tree or whether it's a dried out tree. When does the Isser apply? That's only Belach. Only when it's living. Aval beyavish muter. If it's dried out, then it's muter. The Isser doesn't apply. It seems to be a stira. Amar Rav Yehuda says like kash. It's not a kash. Kan kishe gizem machlev. Kan kishen gizem machlev. There's a difference if whether you would cut off a piece of the tree if it would regenerate. Would it grow back? So if it's a case where you cut off some of the tree, it grows back, it's considered living. If you cut from the tree and it doesn't grow back, it's not considered living. And therefore, if it's gizay machliv, it regenerates, then the Isser applies. You're being over, the Isser applies, the Gzer applies, because you might cut off from the tree, and if you did cut off from the tree, that would be kaitzer. But if it's in gizay machliv, it's not considered alive, and the tree is not alive, and therefore, even if he would cut from the tree, he would not be over the malach of kaitzer. You're calling the tree that it's gizay machlev, that it regenerates. You're calling it yavish. It's not yavish. It's a living tree. So that can't be the chiluk. Elalei kasha can be Masechama, can be Masech Shamim. The difference is Masechama and Masech Shamim. Meaning, really, I'll tell you that in both cases we're talking yavish means it's not living. So therefore, essentially, the gzera should not apply because even if he did cut off from the tree, it's not a living tree. There's no halach of kaitzer. However, there is a maras ayin problem. So therefore, in b'yamais hagshamim, therefore, where there's no, you can't clearly see what is a living tree and what's not. There's no leaves on the tree. Therefore, if you would be allowed to cut off from a yavesh, people would know it's yavesh, and they would think you're allowed to cut off, or you're allowed to use a tree. Rather, if you're allowed to use a tree, rather, in the winter time, people wouldn't know that it's yavish, and there's no clear distinction that it's yavish. People would think that you're allowed to use a tree even in where it's not yavish, even where it's living. So therefore, al sign, you can't use any tree because people will think if you use it, they don't know that it's yavish, it's no clear distinction. They'll think you can use any tree, and they might come to cut from a branch from a living tree. But b'maisa chama, then it's mutter because there's a clear distinction what is a living tree and what's not. The living trees have leaves. The ones that are yavish are dried out. You can clearly see it, so there's no marasayin. Frag the Gemara b'maisa chama, still in the summertime, hanas repairing. There might be still some fruit attached to the tree. The tree might be dried out, but there still might be some fruit attached to the tree. And therefore, it still should be also because if you're allowed to use this tree, then people will think that you can pick a fruit from a tree. Then you might, if you're allowed to use this tree, people will think that you're allowed to use a tree and you're allowed to pick fruit from a living tree. They won't know necessarily that it's a dead tree. So the Gemara answers, but like a pear and a chanami. That would be a problem, but we have to be talking where there are no fruit on the tree. In fact, the Gemara still there might be some twigs on the tree, and the twigs might come off if he uses the tree. So therefore, just like on the fruit, if a person uses the tree, the fruit might come off. People might think you're allowed to pick the fruit. Here also, they might think that the twigs might become removed from the tree, and people will think that you're allowed to pick and cut twigs from a living tree. More answers in we're talking about where it's bare, there's no branches, there's no fruit, and it's clear that it's a dried out tree. He went to the city, the town of Pastia, and he answered them even from using a tree which was bare, which was dry, which was bare, it had no fruit, had no twigs. And according to what you're saying over now, that it should be mutter, that according to this price, it should be mutter. One answers, en chanami, make it then, it should be mutter, but Rav Bika Matzav Gadar. He found an open field and he put a fence around it, meaning that the people in this town were not Talmidei Chachamim, they were Amerotzim, and therefore, if they would be mutter even on a barren tree, they wouldn't know the chiluk, and they would think you can use any tree, and therefore he assered it across the board. He assered it for everybody. And there's a machlekes rishonim that nowadays, do we asser all trees? Do we now, after Rav Bika Matzav Getter, we similarly all trees are asser, or that perhaps nowadays we do make this distinction as machlekes rishonim? It's also to walk on the grass on Shabbos. You're not allowed to use a tree. You're not allowed to walk on the grass on Shabbos. One who is asper gleim, he acts impetuously with his feet. He's a chayta. Even walking, atzbaragla. Then he walks on the grass. Then he's a chayta because he might pluck out the grass. So Lamaisa, it seems to be, the Gemara will continue, that there is a machlekes in the Brises. One Brise says you're allowed to walk on Shabbos on the grass. Or Tanya Yidach also, and the other Brise says it's also to walk on the grass. There's a difference if it's moist or it's dry. Because if it's dried out, like we learned before, then it's dried out. Even if you would come to pick it, it's not a malacha. It's dried out. It's not living. If it's living, then they have the gzera that he might pluck it out, and it would be a malacha. I'll tell you another answer. In both cases, it could be talking about lach. There's a difference in the summertime and can be Maisek Shamim. So when Rashi learns it at this point that the chiluk between Maisek Shamim and Shamim is if there's seeds, we're afraid he might remove the seeds. In the summertime there's seeds, he might remove the seeds. In the winter there's no seeds, so we're not concerned. I'll tell you, really, it can be talking in both cases in the summer. The difference is if he's wearing barefoot or he's wearing shoes. If he's wearing shoes or he's barefoot. If he's wearing barefoot, then the grass, it might, with his toes, it might be tangled with his toes and he might pull it out. If he's wearing shoes, we have no kind of such consideration. Meaning, that now the Gemara is reverting back, not to saying that the chiluk is seeds or not seeds. Maybe the chiluk is not seeds, it's pulling out the grass. And therefore, the chiluk is whether he's wearing shoes or he's not wearing shoes. If he's wearing shoes, then it's mutter. It's mutter in the Maisek Shamim and even in the Mois Hachama. If he's not wearing shoes, then it would be also because he might pluck out the grass. Yeah, another Teres Gemara says, I can tell you in both cases, it's where he's wearing shoes. The difference is if the shoes have spikes or not. So if he's wearing shoes, then it's mutter. But if it has spikes, then it would be aser. Then in the case where it has spikes, it would be aser. The boysem, I'll tell you, both cases could be talking where the spikes in the shoes, and the question is long grass or short grass? If the grass is short, we're not concerned that he'll pull out the grass. If it's long grass, then if it's long grass, then it's aser. Whereas in mutter, where the grass is not long, then it's mutter. But when it's long grass, then it's aser. But the Gemara concludes, but nowadays we pass on the mice like Rosh Shimon. That a davar shein miskaven is mutter. Now in all these cases, he is not mechaven to pull out the grass or to pull out the seeds. So kul hushori, in all of the cases it will be mutter because his kavanah is not for the grass, and therefore it's a davar shein miskaven, and we pass on like Shimon is mutter. However, as the Mefarshim speak out, therefore even Rosh Shimon is only matter where it's not a psigration. If it's in a case where, for instance, it's long grass, it's tall grass, and he has cleats and has spikes, and he inevitably would pull out the grass, then it would be also even nowadays. The Gemara continues with another memra of Rami Bar Chama in the name of Vasi, an unrelated memra. Zok the Gemara weiter, Rami Bar Chama Ravasi, also la Adam Shiochav Ishto Dvar Mitzvah. A person is not allowed to force his wife to have relations. Shenemar va'atz beraglaim chayta. One who's atz beraglaim, he acts impetuously, he's a chayta. V'amar Rishu ben Levi kol ha'kayfi shel dvar mitzvah. Anyone who forces his wife for a dvar mitzvah, havalabanim she'ena muganim. He'll have children who are not proper, who don't have good midas. Omar of ikabar achinina mikro. Where do we see this in the pasuk? Because the pasuk says gam b'loy das never shloi taif. If it's below das, if it's without das, without consent, nefesh lo taif. The result will be a nefesh, a child which is not taif. Tanya namihachi gam below das, nefesh lo taif. Zah kaife ishla dvar mitzvah. That's if he forces his wife dvar mitzvah. Asper b'laim chayta zah boil v'shayna. If he's boiled repeatedly. The Gemara, ini, is that so? Is that really not something that's proper? Hamarov, Haritza losses. Called Bana Zacharim, if wants to have children who are Zacharim, you should boil and be boiled again and to repeat it. So apparently it is a proper conduct. The more answers like Kasha, Kan Lo Das, Kan Shalila Das. If this is the consent, then it's proper conduct. But if without consent, it's not proper. Amar Shmuel bar Nachmani, Amar Rav Yochanan, Kol Isha Shetevas Balad Var Mitzvah. If a woman is teveh, she requests, demands from her husband Var Mitzvah, Havalei Bonim, Shafil B'der Shel Moshe Lo Yikemaisa. He'll have children that were so great that even in the generation Moshe Rabbeinu there weren't children like that. Deal with there shall Moshe exceed in the generation Moshe Rabbeinu says, at the time when it was Moshe was when they were appointing shayftim and appointing dayanim and judges, so he was told to take anoshim o chachamim nevainim v'yidum shivteichem. V'ksiv, and this is what the tziva the Moshe Rabbeinu had. It seems the Moshe Rabbeinu actually, ve'ekach, what he did was, ve'ekach as rashi shivteichem anoshim chacham yiduim. Those were the people that he found to be the ones who were the dayanim. Ve'ilu nevainim, but nevainim lo yashkach, he couldn't find nevainim, he couldn't find people who had been who were nevainim. So that was under the of Moshe Rabbeinu. Ve'ilu gabe le'eksiv, and as far as when it's Leah, it says v'teitza Leah likros of a time elai tavoiki sacha sachaticha. She was Teveya Yaakov Avinu. She said to me, because I have hired you. Uksiv, and her child was Uksiv Yisachar, and it says about Yisachar, Bnei Yisachar Yoidei Vina Itim Ladas Ma Yas Yisrael Rashem Masem Cholayim Al Pim. So it says by Yisachar that the Yoidei Vina, they were in the Vina. So she was Teveya Yaakov Avinu, and the result was Yisachar, who was Yoidei Vina. And it had Moshe Rabbeinu, they couldn't find the Vinim. The Gemara, is this proper conduct to be Teveya? Rav Yitzchak bar Vidimi, as a Klolos as Kal Chava. Chava was cursed with 10 Klolos after the Chet, and Dersiv Ela Yishu Amar, and to the woman he said, Harba Arba, so these are the clauses, Harba Arba, Ela Shnei Tipidom. So it says, Harba Arba, it's Veinech. You'll increase. So they're tsar. So what is it referring to? Harba Arba, it's a double mention, and that's referring to Dam, Achas Dam Nida, Achas Dam Basulim. She'll have Dam Nida, the difficulty and discomfort of Dam Nida, and of Dam Sulim. It's Vainech, the sufferings that Tsar Gilbonim. The Heroinech, that's having childbearing. So Rainim zet Tsari Ibo, that's for the pregnancy, the Tsar of the pregnancy. Be'etz till the Bonim, it says Be'etz Kimashmo, that childbirth, the difficulty and the pain of childbirth. And you'll have a desire for your husband. So that it teaches us that a woman, she has a desire for her husband, when he leaves, when he has to leave, and she has longing for him, a desire for him. And he, the man, will rule over the woman. She has a desire in her heart. And where the man can be tevea verbally, but not the woman. Zuhi mira tevea. And this is proper conduct for a woman. It's considered to be the proper way that she should be tsanua, and that she should not be tevea b'peh. So how are we saying over here that someone is tevea b'peh, that they'll have children afilo b'dersh Moshe Rabbeinu le'aya? More answers ki kamrina the meradatze asu kamei. It means that she does it in a tsanuitic way. She's not tevea blatantly beferish b'peh, but she does it in a way that he understands that she has this intention and has this desire. So he's meratza. She makes herself pleasing to him, and therefore he understands that this is the intent. So the Gemara says that we learned that there was 10 curses. Frankly, we only listed 7. What are the other 3? She's wrapped up like an oven, like someone who's mourning, meaning her head is covered when she goes out. Menuda mikol adam, and she's cut off from other people, as we'll see shortly. And she's like locked up in prison. So my menuda mikol adam, what does that mean? She's menuda, that's like she's in cher, she's cut off. If it means that she can't be alone, she can't have yichud with a man, that's not particular to the woman. A man also is also yichud. But hers is more severe because she's even also can't also lebeitrei. She can't marry 2 men. A man midoraisa can marry 2 women. So therefore, she is considered to be menuda. She's excluded from others. She has her hair grows long like lilis. And when she is mashtenes, she urinates just sitting like a behemoth. And she becomes a pillow for her husband. And Rav Dimi didn't include these because he says those aren't considered curses; those are considered to be praises. The Omar Rabbi Chia might receive malfenim in behemoths. So we're taught. He teaches us through the animals, through the conduct of the animals. We learn out what the proper conduct is, and he gives us wisdom from the birds of the sky. He teaches other animals who preda shekaras mashtanis mayim. So we learn out for like the preda that's keras mashtanis mayim. So that's considered proper conduct. That's the tarnagal that before having relations with the mate, he's mafayas, he appeases her. Amar Rav Yechanan ilmole, like the Torah, if the Torah hadn't been given to us and we would learn out the proper midas, hayinor lameidim, we'd be able to learn out from the bria, tznius mechatrol, we learn out modesty from the cat. Vegazel minamola, and not to steal, we learn out from the ant. V'arayas miyaina, and to be faithful and not have arayas from the yaina. Deracheres mitarnagal, and the proper way for relations with the mate is from the tarnagal. Shemafayis v'achar boil. He appeases and then he's boil. My mefayis lo how's he mefayis? Amar of Yehuda Marav hauchi kamara zabim elach ziga. I'll buy you a coat tamatalach hadkar that reach down to your feet. So as Rashi explains, before relations he spreads his wings and spreads it over and down. So as if to say, I'll buy you a coat that will reach to your feet. After relations, he said to her, he said the crest of his crest should be cut off if he has the means, and then if he doesn't buy it for, because after relations it bends down. So as if to say that this crest on top of his head, that's a guarantee for it. So therefore, he does not learn these 3 because these 3, he says, these are considered to be a proper conduct, a Shevach law. So what does Rav Dimi say? He says, as Tuva Ka'avo, Menuda Mikolam, she's cut off from other people. Chavusha Beis Asurim, it has to be inside, Kol Kvur Bas Melach Pnima, inside and not outside and her way is to be in that way separated from people, because the tznius demands of her that kol kvura basmel panima inside, and not to be mingling with the masses.